So a very good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are. Thank you for joining this X Space today. As I've communicated earlier, I think we will be having more people joining, but in the interest of time, allow us to start this important conversation. This space is hosted by the International Community of Women Living with HIV Eastern Africa, ICWEA, and today we bring to you powerful voices championing HIV prevention for women and girls living with HIV and those affected by HIV. One housekeeping announcement I would want to pass on at this moment. Please feel free to share any questions and comments using the comments tab, but also feel free to unmute yourself if you feel like speaking through directly. My name is Beatrice Ajonye. I work with the International Community of Women Living with HIV Eastern Africa as a national coordinator for the community-led monitoring program. It is my honor today to moderate this experts on omission of PrEP funding, a deadly massacre, featuring a distinguished panel of community advocates in HIV. Personally, I have been working in HIV for a great part of my professional life, and I took on this programming path 9 years ago at a time when HIV epidemic across the globe was witnessing steady reduction in HIV incidence. Right from the time when I joined HIV programming, I've witnessed a scientific shift in HIV prevention from the traditional ABC to scientifically proven biomedical interventions with efficacy levels, including the voluntary medical male circumcision, antiretroviral medicines for HIV prevention, that is pre-exposure prophylaxis, post-exposure prophylaxis, transformative impact of effective HIV prevention care and treatment programs. I am very grateful for the progress we have made, and I am so hopeful that we can realize epidemic control and ultimately a future where HIV is no longer a public health threat. We at the International Community of Women Living with HIV Eastern Africa believe that reaching epidemic control requires that the tap of new infections is closed. And this is only possible if we invest in the scale-up and funding for scientifically proven HIV prevention interventions, including pre-exposure prophylaxis options that meet the specific needs of the end user. And as many of you may know, in recent times, funding shifts and uncertainties in global health financing are threatening the availability and continuity of pre-exposure prophylaxis options as critical HIV prevention tools, especially choices for women and girls. One of the biggest concerns is around oral PrEP and the slow scale-up of the long-acting HIV prevention tools, including the cabotegravir long-acting injectable PrEP and the dapivirine ring. So today we are here to unpack what really this means for our communities and how it affects access, choice, trust in the health systems, and ultimately the lives of those that are at risk. So today, joining us for this phenomenal conversation are the three distinguished speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me introduce to you our first speaker, Yvette Raphael, a co-founder of Advocacy for Prevention of HIV and AIDS in Southern Africa and a powerhouse in HIV prevention advocacy. Ms. Yvette Raphael is one of South Africa's most influential civic leaders and human rights activists. She is part of the African Women Prevention Community Accountability Board, which together with the International Community of Women Living with HIV Eastern Africa leads the Choice Manifesto. This initiative, which is the Choice Manifesto, advocates for women's rights to choose from a range of HIV prevention options and calls for a strong commitment to expanding access to long-acting HIV prevention technologies. Our second speaker, I am hoping has joined. I will proceed and introduce her, is Ms. Peluth Natumanya Bampa. She is the head of programs at the International Community of Women Living with HIV Eastern Africa, where she leads strategic initiatives aimed at improving the health, rights, and well-being of women and girls living with HIV across the East African and Southern African region. And our third speaker will be Edna Mwemtusi, a bold, dynamic, young leader working with Dare Progress in Tanzania, an organization that promotes young women, promotes young people's engagement and leadership in developing innovative approaches to improve access to integrated HIV and SRHR services. Edna's work experience spans around sexual reproductive health and rights and HIV response. She is a passionate public health communicator and advocate for policy change. So today, together with these distinguished speakers, we will be talking through the conversation around omission of PrEP funding and how it is a deadly massacre. We will be interrogating questions around what happens when HIV prevention programs are not funded, and how do we protect the gains we've made? How do we ensure that prevention remains a right and not a privilege? So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to dive into the conversation as I invite our first speaker, Ms. Yvette Raphael, to speak through to some of the questions we'll be posing. So, Yvette, are you there?
Good afternoon. Yes, I am.
Okay, so Miss Yvette, you're most welcome to this space, and I would like to navigate through your experience with the Choice Manifesto, where you have been a very powerful voice in advocating for HIV prevention choice. Kindly tell
Thank you.
us, with the increasing concerns around reduced funding for HIV prevention, especially PrEP, what would be the most immediate risks you are seeing for women and girls uh, who rely on these PrEP choices?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I just want to say the African Women's Prevention Community Accountability Board remains committed to ensure that adolescent young girls and women in Africa and globally are able to access every single HIV prevention method that was developed on their backs or the backs of their parents. We, as women from the Accountability Board, are committed to ensure that HIV prevention continues to be a priority moving forward. We also called in in the Choice Manifesto for the funding of HIV prevention to ensure that these methods become available and accessible. So it's important for us to understand that when we started talking about HIV prevention, and when I was received this invitation, I wanted to look back on my own journey as a mother, as a woman living with HIV. How did I get involved with HIV prevention? And I navigated back to around 2017, where the number of young women being infected with HIV was 3,474 every week in South Africa, and most Southern African countries and Eastern African countries. As we all know, Uganda and South Africa are the leads in HIV prevention research because of the high numbers of HIV. So this issue around HIV prevention is not a new one. And you articulated so well that we've come a long way from A, B, and C. But importantly, is that women participate in trials so that they can have access to HIV prevention methods and those around them. So as we saw 20 January coming and we saw the cuts in HIV prevention, did we realize in HIV funding, did we realize people are speaking around only life-saving drugs and HIV prevention communities as well as advocacy took the back burner? What we will see coming back is us repeating those statistics that I just mentioned, statistics that was on our hands every day, statistics that were the reasons why we were committed to HIV prevention research in the first place. We've seen the development of the Depiferine ring, we've seen the development of PrEP, we've seen now the successful and important results coming out of cabotegravir, but most importantly is we've seen some of the results coming out of the Lenacapavir study, purpose 1 and 2. So it's important for us to know that this research happened at the backs of women. This research happened so that women can have access. And our biggest fear and our biggest worry is that should HIV prevention not be funded, we will see those numbers coming back. We will see young people getting infected again in astronomical numbers. As it is, we had safe spaces for young people to go and access HIV prevention methodologies, methods in communities where they are. So currently, our young people across the globe, because we must remember this is also happening to the United States, across the globe are faced with much confusion, much chaos when they go to their clinics to go and access these treatments. And we know if you are taking something for the rest of your life all the time, you have to have no interference with you know how you go and get it with your routine. So these young people are now faced with closed clinics where they get to the clinics and there's notices that they should be closed. More importantly, what we also warn about is when they get to these clinics that are closed, they are then advised to go into our government clinics. And when they get there, they are expected to have a referral letter, which makes it very problematic because these clinics closed overnight. Where would young people get these referral letters? So we are faced with a dilemma, but we know choice is key. We are not going to repeat the fact that women are not homogeneous. We are different. We have different needs at different spaces in our life, at different points in our lives. We have different needs when it comes to just our lifestyles changing. So when we look at this, we know that young people are now in a state of fear, and we need to prevent that from happening. But what most importantly, we need to call on to our partners. We know that currently USAID or USAID PEPFAR is not going to come back the way it is. But importantly is we need to speak to our allies to say for us to regroup and to prioritize HIV prevention communities as well as advocacy as we go forward in these uncharted waters, spaces where we've never seen before when it comes to funding of HIV and HIV prevention globally. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to set the scene.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Rivette Raphael, for those insights. Ladies and gentlemen, critical things I pick from Raphael's submission are that funding for HIV prevention choice is dwindling. And if we do not continue to fund HIV prevention choice, then we shall get back to where we were over 4 decades ago. The numbers will increase. She highlights critical statistics around new infections of HIV, and therefore it's very critical and important for us to keep the momentum around advocating for HIV prevention choice. Raphael also highlights the fact that there are a number of barriers to HIV prevention choice, and some of them include closed clinics and referral mechanisms. She also highlights the fact that HIV prevention tools need to be accessible for women and girls and for all those that need it. And she emphasizes research, HIV prevention research, especially in Uganda and South Africa, and how the two countries have always been at the center of HIV prevention research. Thank you very much, Ms. Raphael. And I would want to take on this conversation to our next speaker. Edna, I hope you're there. Edna?